How do you test and ensure bias is not being introduced into your models? Because we know that, AI bias is a concern.
I want to just speak to that real quick. Bias will be in your models. Bias will be in your models. It is not possible to create an unbiased model. So I think it's important, and I want Jason to weigh in on this too, but bias is there. It will be there. You must assume it is there. Now, how extreme? What is it? Where does it look like? Like, what is that, right? So never be like, oh no, we didn't do any of that. Yes, you did, because you're human. And it's unconscious bias. And it's like not a bad thing. It's just a thing that you must always be cognizant of.
Yeah, great points. Yeah, I was looking at the AI incident database, and it's neat because they categorize their incidents by particular categories. And some of those categories are race, sex, nation of origin, disability, region. And it's was really telling. Out of the 100 or so incidents they recorded over the last year or two, it looks to be about 70% are race and sex-based bias, just inherent, and they created incidents from them because people were taking action based on the data. I saw I think it was LinkedIn's search algorithm just got updated to not favor men, as an example recently. And that's a similar idea when you're looking at search engines are basically fancy AI underneath the technologies there, the recommendation engines. They're similar neural nets. They use embeddings. They use similar technology. And so they're also going to have some of that bias inherent in them without us even realizing it. So I think trying to ask for a model card is helpful. It may be too technical for some people, but they should be able to verbalize the bias. If they say there's none, they're lying. And if they hopefully give you some good info on how you should use that model, and try to balance it. And that's why you always still need a human, someone who can think actively about the data it's generating to make sure it's correct. So we don't want them to operate in a vacuum usually, because you get lots of problems like the couple I mentioned.
Yeah, so cross-check, be suspicious, always verify. Absolutely. Shalane, would you like to add to that as well?
No, I just agree with everything they said. I mean, bias is going to exist. There's never a zero sum, just like if someone tells you, we can make you 100% secure. It's no such thing. You're never 100% secure. Anybody who tells you that, please run the other way.
Right.
It just doesn't exist.
We're all in agreement. Awesome. That's why we're here.
Include anti-bias training for all users as you would as you're building out your culture for how you want your employees to interact with each other. AI is just a tool, right? And if people are unaware that the tool can also produce the same biases as people, then you're going to have an issue. So you would train people how to use the tool, but also train them how to be as unbiased or how to navigate biases around each other as employees in the same organization, right? And you would teach them how to identify that. So if I worked at Microsoft with Lori and I see that Lori is being mistreated in some way because of a bias, I would raise that as an issue to AR. And so or to HR. So if I notice the tool is producing output that seems to be biased, I need to be able to raise awareness to that as well. And so yes, train your employees to recognize when things are not as they should be from a bias perspective, one way or the other. But yes, the bottom line is yes, that training should be made available.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the tricky parts of bias for a hot second. So people, people can be like, well, I don't have bias. I am completely fair. Love that for you. So how to come out of that? I want to give you a concrete example from the real world. So facial recognition is known to be biased toward being able to recognize white men specifically. It's just, statistically, this is true. And so why does that matter? Why does it make a difference? When I was evaluating this technology a few years ago for the purpose of authentication, right? It's like, okay, so you walk into a company, you walk into a bank branch, and they say, oh, look, it's Bob Smith or it's Sally Cooper, right? And so then the person can come and greet you by your name. If it only reliably recognizes white men, and you have people of a diverse backgrounds coming into your bank, and you have this thing where only the white men are being recognized reliably, you immediately start having to have regulatory challenges from a Fair Lending Act perspective. Because the Fair Lending Act is such that you cannot decide who to lend to based on, you know, race, religion, creed, all of those things, right? So if I'm only recognizing my customers and then I take that and say, okay, I'm going to let them log into an ATM, or I'm going to open their bank records for this teller or this private banker, then you already have a challenge from a regulatory perspective, right? Just from the moment somebody walked in and you were using a camera. So the business impact of bias is real. And so it's not about whether, you know, you, Bob, are biased as a person. It's about, are these machines able to make decisions accurately and fairly, such that I'm not going to get into trouble with the feds? And I think that's a really neutral example of, this can impact my business. This is why bias is important.
Yeah, great point. Thank you for that. Jason, would you like to add anything to what Laurie and Shlaine had mentioned?
Yeah, I think one of the other points of education is on prompting and how you construct your prompts, because you can actually ask the AI, if you're more explicit, to provide an unbiased and balanced perspective on a topic. You can actually also ask it to adopt a persona that may be of a different race, gender, belief system, and it'll actually take on that persona. And so you can actually test your results through different personas just through prompting. And a lot of people will build what they call evaluation frameworks out of these, so that you have a series of prompts and a series of answers that you can then rate and measure. And if you switch models or a new model comes out, you can actually run that evaluation suite through your AI through prompting, score the answers, and then you can actually see, is it better or worse? And you need positive and negative cases in there, that some that demonstrate bias, some that don't. And you want to try to, and that's typically the work of a data scientist. But you can kind of do that on your own a bit, and learning to prompt effectively, because we're not talking to people, we're talking to a computer system that, and our goal is to adjust its weights in the model to elicit a response based on a particular topic. And so the way that we elicit and set those weights is through the input we give it. And if you don't think about what you're putting in there, you're going to get probably garbage back out. It's garbage in, garbage out.